Welcome to the Enjoy Life podcast. This podcast is about enjoying our lives by making the best of our current situation and being able to choose our mindset, our goals, and our actions so that we can guide our lives to go in the direction that we want it to go. Well, in this podcast, I'm going to share with you information that I've learned just through personal experience, which, my mistakes and failures, as well as some of the successes too, obviously. And some of the things I learned from a little bit of formal education and with working with people to make positive changes in their lives. These are things that I'm trying to do in my life because it wouldn't be right for me to share things that for you to do that I'm not willing to do myself. Now, by no means am I perfect or have everything just right. I'm human too. So some of the things I'm going to share with you are things that I'm trying to do or I'm still working on improving, but it's still valuable information because if it can benefit me, then it might be able to benefit you too. I'm glad you're here and listening in. Just make sure that while you're listening in, you're storing things away that you can take action on to be able to move forward and take your life in the direction that you want it to go. Once again, I'm glad you're here, and let's get started. Well, hello there. I'm your host, Nick Mazey, and this is the Enjoy Life podcast. I think you're in a great place. I know that I'm biased because I made it. But at the same time, today we're going to talk about some great things. They might be very helpful to you. I've seen these specific mental barriers stop people from the progress they could be making. And I don't want that to be you, so that's why this podcast episode is here. We're talking about 3 mental barriers to break through so that you can make the progress that you want to make. Before we dive into today's episode and the material I really want to share with you today, I need to tell you about something. Because I know that taking action toward your goals and the life that you want and things like that, sometimes it is a little bit difficult and it's so easy to complicate it and make it more of a challenge than it needs to be. And that's why I made a checklist, a resource that I think could help you. It's 7 easy steps to take action toward the life that you want. What it is just a simple way to kind of figure out what that step is and make it a little easier for you. You can go to nickmazey.com/7 steps. That's nickmazey.com/7 and then steps, STEPS. And there it's just going to take you to a place that you can register to get it. It's free, but it is like any resource out there. It's not going to help you unless you use it. So to get the checklist, go through, use it, and take the action that you want to take so that you can make the improvements and changes you want to make in your life. And have your life be more how you want it to be. You still got to do the work, but the checklist might help. That's nickmazey.com/7 steps. All right. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about 3 mental barriers for you to break through so that you can make progress. When you hear about somebody's success, sometimes it's easy to see how things just worked out for them in the long run. Sometimes things just seem nice and perfect and clean. They really do, because we see that after somebody has a lot of success, and they hit their goals and they make these improvements, we see how nice it was, but we don't see how really messy the whole progress could have been. And in fact, just starting to talk about this, I haven't even gotten into a lot of my notes for this episode. I think about the times in my life that people have seen either someone else's success or some of the areas I've made improvements myself. And the first thing they're talking about, is how lucky they must have been or how things just worked out for them. And so many times that is just not the case. It is messy. There is some work. There's some of the details to work out, but it's just not nice and perfect. In fact, sometimes seeing how somebody has achieved the success or hit their goals or made some improvements, sometimes seeing that in somebody else actually creates these obstacles in our own minds that can stop us from doing the things that we want to do, from hitting our own goals. These obstacles they end up being a big problem because we believe them to be true, and then they stop us from making the progress that we want to make. So don't let these obstacles that we're going to talk about stop you from making the progress that you can make. So I'm going to share with you what these obstacles are, and then at the very end, to tell you what you can do about them. Now, honestly, what you can do about it, the solution is so simple. So when I talk about these obstacles, don't start to feel a little defeated, okay? So the first obstacle we're talking about is the thought that timing has to be perfect. That perfect timing is required. Now, if you happen to time everything just right and it works out, awesome. There's nothing wrong with perfect timing. I just say it's not required. I don't want my success to hinge on the fact that of me waiting for the very, very perfect time to start something, and then all of a sudden it's going to work out just right. You hear about, people trying to time the stock market. I don't know. I'm not a financial expert. I know a lot of times it really doesn't work out. Or anything that you're trying to do, timing's probably not going to be perfect. And that's okay. You don't have to have perfect timing. There's a Chinese proverb that I think sums this up just perfect. I love it. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Well, and that little saying should give you an indication of what I'm going to suggest at the end on how to address this one barrier. But yeah, there is a perfect time, I guess, when things are just right. But if you miss that time, don't let it stop you. Or more importantly, don't sit around and wait for that perfect time to come. And talking about this, I think about my podcast. My timing wasn't perfect for starting a podcast. Probably would have been about 5, maybe 6, 7 years ago. It would have been even better. It'd probably be a lot more successful just with having the more material out there and being around for a long time. Probably would have been, have a lot greater reach had I started it, 6 years ago. Well, I didn't, and that's okay. The timing wasn't perfect, but I shouldn't let that stop me from taking the steps that I want to take and making the improvements and doing the things I want for my life. Well, don't let the need or the thought for the need of perfect timing to stop you from making the progress that you want, from taking the actions that you should take in your life. On to the next mental barrier is that massive action is required. Okay, now, sure, taking massive action towards your goals, is great. If you're at that place and you're going to take those huge steps, then do it. The progress will probably be a lot bigger and faster if you're taking huge steps to go in the direction that you want to go. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem that I have, where I'm talking about the barrier is that it's absolutely required. There's a major influencer out there, not going to name anybody, he's wildly successful, helps a ton of people. And he promotes, taking massive action. I'm not going to say that he's wrong. Of course not. He helps so many people. He's been doing it for decades. But, it's the required part that I'm saying can be a barrier for people. And it might be one of the things that's stopping you. Now, if you're taking massive steps towards your goals and you're getting the progress that you want to get, then awesome. Keep doing it. And this podcast episode might not be for you, and that's okay. And then a few years back, I used to follow this another podcast a lot. And the host always spoke about massive imperfect action. So at least he did, in my opinion, get that part where it doesn't have to be perfect. The action, as long as you're taking really, really big steps. And so I definitely like that a little bit more, just because I make plenty of mistakes. So I like that imperfect part. But all progress does not require the actions to be massive. We can shape our behaviors with small adjustments. You just when you make a small adjustment, a little improvement, when you take some small steps, and then you repeat, they turn into habits. And when we do something over and over, and we make that little bit of progress, we shape our actions, we make the little improvements, we turn those into habits. And then what happens when you develop really good habits in your life? And you keep moving forward towards your goal? Well, what happens. You make progress, and then before you know it, you've gone a long way because you've been consistent and you've been persistent, and you keep taking those steps. You keep making those improvements. They might be small, but over time, boom, you end up achieving your goal. Now, that goal might be huge, and it may have taken you a long time to get there. So the continual improvement can get you there, but yeah, you could take the massive action and get there faster. I'm just saying I don't think it's required. In psychology, they tell us all about the shaping of behavior, and a lot of times that was the small adjustments. And so that's where a little bit of my thinking comes in saying, don't let the massive action requirement, like that thought, stop you from taking the actions that you can take. Once again, my podcast, my podcast was full of me taking small little steps. Start off as a tiny little blog where I just put my thoughts out on the internet. And then that kind of grew a little bit. And then before you know it, I started doing some recording. And that was just, continual progress in the direction that I wanted to go. And I learned along the way. And it was all small steps. All right, now the last one, the last barrier, that we're talking about, is that you have to be great. That being great or very good is required. Now, there's another saying that I love, and it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So you definitely want to work your way up to improving and being better and good, and honing that craft or really perfecting the improvements that you want to make. But you don't have to be great to start. And that's the thing. You can't improve before you start. You have to start. You got to keep moving forward. Then you can adjust and improve and learn along the way. But all that happens after you start. And this mental barrier, it's a huge thing. It happens with a lot of people that, I've kind of worked with. And then they see all the flaws and imperfections and what's wrong with what they're doing right now. And that they, I shouldn't start because, I don't know how to do this or that, or, and it ends up stopping all progress, all action just about, is that thought that, they gotta be so much better than they are. But it's when you start. When you start is when you start to improve and you adjust and you learn, you get better. And that might lead to the faster improvement, and the making progress at a quicker rate and even taking bigger steps, because you do get a little bit better after you start. You got to be persistent with it, but that's when a lot of the value happens. That's when you get so much better is starting. And you just can't improve until you take that first step and move forward. And so I want to say again that, having good timing, or taking really big steps, and being good at something, those are awesome characteristics, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's the requirement that I have a big problem. And when we think of something as being a requirement, it can be a barrier for us to take the actions and steps going forward. Strive for better timing and big steps and being the best that you can. But most important is that you are taking steps and taking action. And that's what's going to lead to all those other things actually happening. So what can you do about each of these barriers? And there's a very simple solution, a very simple alternative to these barriers that way they don't stop you from moving forward. And they're so simple. Now, I know they're not always easy. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I made that checklist I told you about at the beginning of this episode. And just go to nickmazey.com/7 steps. And it might help you with doing each of these little things that you can do so that you can blow past these barriers, break through, and make the progress that you want. The first thing to address that first barrier is just to start now. Do something now. Maybe if you're driving in your car listening to this episode, maybe not now, but do something today to move toward the goal that you have. Whatever area of your life you want to make improvement in, whatever adjustments that you want to make, do something now. Because once you start, and there's that whole saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So then you'll actually start making progress. But it's those other good things that also get to happen when you start. Start moving forward. What happens when you move forward a little bit is you get a little bit of momentum. And there's a saying that I like. I don't know if I came up with it or not, but motivation is not going to hit you on the couch. Motivation tends to happen after you start. Once I get to the gym and I've been working out for a few minutes and getting some movement, that's actually when I feel like being at the gym and exercising is a little bit into it. If I'm sitting on the couch or if I'm doing something else, a lot of times I don't have this urge to go to the gym and work out. It's after I start. So start now, get a little bit of movement, get a little bit of progress, a little bit of momentum. You might even get a little motivated by starting. Just start. All right. And now for the next one. We're talking about those massive actions being a requirement and that being a barrier. The solution is just to start small. If you're struggling with taking those huge steps, just start small. There's nothing wrong. Once again, when you start small, you can get a little bit of momentum. You can get a little bit of progress, and that can be energizing. It can actually help you to focus on what you're doing and make it real, so that then you're more willing and able to be able to take those huge steps. But if you start now and you start small, then you might be able to get to those large leaps later on. And then the last one is just start where you're at. You're not perfect. Okay, let me just go ahead and get that out there. I'm far from it in everything that I do. But at the same time, if you're just okay enough to start and start small, then you can start where you're at. And then you can get a little bit better. And after you do something a few times, then you're going to get a little even better. And if you want to improve your health, you might not know all the things to improve your health, but if you make the tiniest little adjustment today that you know about, that you're skilled enough to be able to do, and that might just be drinking a little bit more water, and that could be that small step that you're aware that could help you out with your health, is drinking more water. And then once you do that, you might learn some new ways to improve. Or this might be, running, or if you have a goal of being an author, but you know that you're not the best writer. And so you might not be great at that, but by starting where you're at, with practice, you'll get better, and the words might come out a little bit more easy and more natural, and it might make a little bit more sense to more people. But all that's not going to happen until you start. That's why I say just start. Start small. Start where you're at. In case you haven't picked up on the fact that I think just starting tends to be the biggest success that you can have, because that's when you start moving forward. But just please do not let these mental barriers and these things that you might think are required, don't let them stop you from making the progress that you want to make in your life. This is your life. Go make it what you want it to be, and you can, because I believe that if you start small, you start where you're at, then you can make some progress. It might not be perfect. It won't be perfect. That's okay. You still can make progress, and better than where you're at right now for you in your life is better. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of the time that you have now, because you do have today. So go make it count. And like I said a couple of times, if you want that checklist to help you out a little bit, I think it's a good thing. And then honestly, I've sent it out there. And give me some feedback. If you like it, great. If you think I can improve, do something a little different, I'm always welcome to hear. I always love hearing that. You're more than welcome to share with me any of your feedback, comments, suggestions, and that would help me improve. It'd be most appreciated. You can go to nickmazy.com/7 steps for that, and just take some action today. All right. Thanks for listening. Take care, and I'll talk to you again soon.